What's going on, guys? Dropadooski here. Today we're going to do our day 1 T13's guide for the Witch Doctor for season 13, and the Hedrig's gift for the Witch Doctor this time around is going to be the Jade Harvester set. So the Jade Harvester set is a very strong solo build, but it's not known historically for being a speed farming set. So what I've done here is put together the best thing I can for you to use on the first day, and then if you want to continue forward, I will link in the description a guide to the optimized speed farming set for Jade. But this is going to be what I would think is the easiest one to roll early on, and it will enable you to kill things in higher torments so that you can farm the gear for either the Speed Jade or, you know, Helltooth Chicken or something else for the Witch Doctor as you're going forward. So let's jump over to the gear. This is using the 6-piece Jade Harvester set, and the Jade Harvester set gives you damage reduction when you soul harvest. So it gives you 50% damage reduction for 12 seconds when you, and it will consume all of the damage from your Haunt and your Locust Swarm, or 1650 seconds worth of the remaining damage. So it's a huge burst of damage when you go in and you soul harvest, as long as you have everything on there. The reason that works so well is because you use a Ring of Emptiness. Now, I'm wearing my Ring of Emptiness for this. This is going to be one of the items that is hard for you to get. So I would say right away, this is going to be the first thing that you roll for. So as soon as you get your 6-piece bonus, when you're doing your lower rifts and you're farming your Death's Breath, you're going to be re-rolling the yellow rings in the cube with your DBs to convert them to legendaries, trying to get this Ring of Emptiness. You really want a Ring of Emptiness, and it's required to make Jade work well. So that's going to be the first thing you go for. The second thing that I would go for is my Wormwood or Ingeom. Now, Wormwood is fairly easy to get, so I would say that would be second, because you could probably roll 4 or 5 legendary staffs and get a Wormwood. I am equipping it here, as that way you don't have to fish for an offhand or a mojo. So if you equip this here, then it gets away from having to equip an Ingeom and get a decent thing of the deep. But later on for Speed Jade, you're going to want both of those things. And then going from there, I would move into my belt or bracers. Now, I am using, once again, the gold wrap coupled with the Boon of the Hoarder. This is just a great survivability thing for almost every speed farming build out there. So you're not only collecting gold for empowering greater rifts while you run through with the Boon of the Hoarder, but you're also getting the survivability that you need throughout the rifts, the T13's, by using the gold wrap. Nemesis bracers, as Nemesis bracers will give you an extra pack. It's really good to have on any key farming build. And then going from there, you're going to want a Quetzalcoatl for the cube. Now, Quetzalcoatl, as you can see here, Locust Swarm and Haunt now deal the damage in half their normal duration. So this is standard for solo Jade, for the Speed Jade, the optimized Speed Jade that I will link in the description, and you're going to be using it for this. So you're going to go for Quetzalcoatl as soon as you get done with the other pieces. Now, the reason I put it this far in is because you can still do damage without it. It's just going to give you a big burst of damage once you have it in the cube. So I would go for the other items first, and then I would go for the Quetzalcoatl. I am using an Ingeom for this. Now, I will say the Ingeom, the reason that I have it here is just for making things easier on yourself. You don't have to have it early on. I would recommend going for it, as you're going to need it for some build that you're playing in the season. Ingeom is probably one of the best items there is for speed farming, so you should go for it. But I prioritize some of the other items in this setup first, and then start rolling your Ingeoms, because based on RNG, sometimes it can take you 200 Paragons, sometimes it can take you 5. You know, so sometimes it's a pain in the ass, but sometimes you get lucky. So I do have an Ingeom in the cube here. If I did not, I would either cube my Wormwood and take a Sacred Harvester thing of the deep, or I would cube Sacred Harvester, dependent on how bad this is, or if I get this ancient, and I would keep the I would just not use the thing of the deep for the first setup, as I'm not using on the one I'm showing you now. The other slots, the other 2 ring slots or jewelry slots and your amulet, are kind of up to you. Since this is the early day 1 T13 kind of setup, Rachel's Ring of Larceny is what I would eventually use for the Speed Jade. It gives you a movement speed boost when you use Horrify, which is nice for anything that, you know, you're trying to go fast on, but you don't have to take that. Anything that's well rolled that has crit int or crit, you know, area or something like that, you can take, but eventually you'll probably want a nice Rachel's Ring of Larceny. And then for the amulet, you can pick whatever you get that has the best stats. On the optimized Speed Jade setup, you do use a Hellfire Ring. There's no way, no how you're going to want to farm those early in the season, so just take whatever you can get that works well. The last thing I'll mention here is I like to put Convention of the Elements in here, and since you're already going to be rolling rings for the Ring of Emptiness, you're most likely going to run into this Rachel's Ring and the Convention of the Elements. Cube one and wear the other. So if you get a real low rolled Ring of Emptiness and a decently rolled Convention, wear it and then cube the Ring of Emptiness, and vice versa. You want to get as many multipliers out of this as you can, or the highest multipliers, so cube the one that rolls the lowest. That's pretty much it on the gear for this setup. Well, let's go over the abilities quickly. We have Haunt, Poison Spirit, Piranha, Tornadoes, Horrify, Frightening Aspect. Now on the other speed setup, you take Stalker, which gives you movement speed. For this one, I take Frightening Aspect because I have the Rachel's Ring of Larceny. I am getting the speed buff already, and 50% additional armor for 8 seconds is great. So you might as well take the survivability early on because you're not going to have very many Paragons. Spirit Walk, Severance. You could take Jaunt here. I like to go fast, so I take Severance. Jaunt is probably the smarter pick on the first day of the season, as it lasts an extra 3 seconds and gives you a little more time to be invulnerable to damage. Soul Harvest, I picked the poison one here as we are prioritizing poison on our elementals for the bracers and the amulet, but you get all of the runes anyways. That's part of the Jade Harvester 6-piece bonus. And then Locust Swarm, Cloud of Insects, and enemies affected deal 25% reduced damage. Now since you're wearing the Wormwood, your Cloud of Insects is spreading all over the place anyways, so that's going to help with the survivability thing even further. So for the passive skills, we have Grave Injustice, very standard for pretty much all Witch Doctor builds. Confidence Ritual, this is going to give you that 25% additional damage to enemies within 20 yards. All enemies that you kill are within 20 yards, as they blow up when you soul harvest, so you're going to get that pretty much all the time. Creeping Death, your Haunt and Locust Swarm, and the damage amplification from Tornadoes lasts almost forever. This is standard for any of the Haunt and Swarm builds, and then Spirit Vessel, because you're going to want that extra life, because early on the #1 problem that we're going to see with all of these day 1 T13 guides is staying alive. The multipliers that we're seeing these days with the previous patch, or the current patch that we're on, we have plenty of damage when we get our 6-piece set. It's staying alive in the higher content that becomes difficult. So I'm going to quickly go into a rift, and I do want to talk about this a little further. This is not going to be the best thing you can do for Witch Doctor, but since this is the Hedrig's Gift, and if you're planning on playing solo, or you're going to take part in Leviathan's self-found solo league, which I will put a link to in the description if you haven't heard of it, you basically can't play with anyone else, and you're going to be prioritizing the class that you want to push on. So I would say that if you're going to start and plan on pushing Witch Doctor for the self-found solo league, this guide will be very, very helpful for that early on for you to get some gear. So okay, let's jump into Rift and see how this thing works. So you come on in, right away you're going to want to start haunting immediately, getting the swarms out, and then going in and soul harvesting, and you'll see things start to die. As soon as they start to die, you're going to start getting that gold. Make sure you keep that Horrify active to get that 8-second damage reduction bonus, and once you get close enough to things and you know that they have Swarm and Haunt, then you can go in and soul harvest and kill everything. So you see how everything just died there. You can basically spam that when there's enough enemies around that have died, because your Grave Injustice is going to reset the cooldown on your soul harvest, giving you the ability to do it over and over again, which is really, really nice, right? That's why Jade works so well. And so poison is up, so we're going to go in and hit as many things as we can. The problem with this setup in the way it is you can't cast Haunt as fast since you're using a two-hander, but it's going to have a really high damage output, and it's going to give you the ability to get those resets right away, and then you can just keep killing things and cruising through, right? And we have a channeling pylon right now, which is really nice. That's always been nice for Jade. It doesn't matter if you're running this variation or another, and kind of just cruising through. Now, I will say right now that if you're playing hardcore, this is going to be iffy. I'm surprised I haven't died yet, because early on you just don't have the paragons, and if you don't get the gold out, or that gold wrap happens to fall off, you can die very, very quickly on a Witch Doctor, especially considering that you're not using Lakumbas for this setup. Now, one thing that I could mention there, and that is a possibility, is you could go Lakumbas and early on say, you know what, I'm not going to get as many Death Breath, and I'm not going to take my Nemesis Bracers, but you could go ahead and take the Lakumbas early in the season and get that extra survivability if you feel like you need it, and then switch it out once you're good to go, you know. And that's basically it. You know, you continue with the rotation. You want to make sure that you have a pet out. That's another thing I'll mention. Always have a pet out on a build that uses gold wrap or relies on picking up gold in order to survive. It's very important that you get gold as often as possible on any of these builds, and also make sure to keep that Horrify up. If you don't keep that Horrify up, you're basically losing a huge chunk of armor, and that's going to make it very, very difficult to survive. One thing that I did forget, there we go, I was waiting till we ripped because I knew we were going to at some point with these mobs. One thing I want to mention here before we finish everything up is the legendary gems. Now, I do use Boon of the Hoarder here. You can also then use Bane of the Trapped, and here is where you can kind of play around with it. I'm using the Molten Wildebeest here, and as you can see, I do take level 25 gems with these, just to make it more realistic. You could also take an esoteric, right? You could take a level 25 esoteric or whatever level you have it at that point, and kind of play around with which one actually helps the most. It seems like auto attacks are really rough, but also affixes are really rough. I mean, everything's kind of rough in the beginning of the season, so it's going to be helpful either way, so take those things. Everybody, thank you guys so much for checking this out. I will be putting up a follow-up guide for the Helltooth Angry Chicken guide, which I think is probably my favorite speed build, and also a variation that you can do with it that is not the chicken, but it still moves very fast if you guys have been doing chicken forever and you want to try something else out. I will say with this, this is going to be very useful for self-solo found league. In all honesty, when you're starting out the season, you're going to want to utilize the strongest sets that you can, and if you are playing with other groups and you want to go Witch Doctor, remember that you're going to, you know, getting the Jade set is going to kind of be a hindrance for you, and you're probably not going to move as fast. So prioritize keeping yourself alive. Take Severance here so that you can move with everyone and run with monks and run with DHs and run with other players that have builds that are just, you know, stronger right out of the gate. This one will work for T13, and it will get you through and enable you to gear. And as always, if you're in there and it feels like you can't survive, turn it down a notch, you know what I mean? Be as efficient as you can to get the gear that you're looking for quickly. Guys, thank you guys so much for checking this out. Don't forget, I stream Monday through Saturday starting at noon MST on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Dropadooski. I will be going ham all weekend long for the start of Season 13. We'll be starting at 5 p.m. MST or 4:30 p.m. MST on Friday and going all the way until probably 4 or 5 in the morning. So come on by, say what up. If you have any questions, hit me up on the live stream anytime. Thank you guys so much, and I hope that Season 13 is fantastic for everybody. Peace!